All right. Like I said earlier in this discussion, that the fossil record isn't where my argument is. As many problems as there are for Darwin with the fossil record, the theory, his theory, truly stands or falls in this chasmic, infinite jump from non-life to life, from inorganic to organic, from randomness and nothingness to information and that first microbe. See, that's where I can't get there. I simply don't have the faith to believe in Darwin's theory. I can't get from the nothing random universe to that first microbe, because what you have to understand, and what I'm going to remind you of again, is the jump from randomness to information to that first microbe is orders of magnitude beyond the jump from the microbe to you. This is what people forget, is that to get up to that first living cell is, I can't even think of an analogy. You may as well try and do a standing broad jump across the Grand Canyon. And maybe that's not even enough. Maybe you may as well try and do a high jump to the moon. You can't get there. So this is where I believe Darwin's theory falls apart completely. Is because for him, back in the day, with the limited perspective and understanding that he had of life, it was no great leap of the imagination to go from nothing to that first microbe, if that first microbe was as simple as a soap bubble. It was no great stretch of imagination to get from non-life to life if you saw life spontaneously generating all over the place. So, for him and his peers, it was a plausible scenario, is a plausible possibility. Whereas for us today, we still have to embrace this guy's ideas, knowing what we do about the cellular matrix, about staggering complexity, about information. And what are we finding when we get into the cell? We're finding nanotechnology. We're finding molecular machines that have symbiotic relationships with other molecular machines that are programmed to sustain this cellular matrix. We are finding transport vehicles. We're finding power plants. We're finding assembly lines. We're finding highways and scaffolding. We're finding outboard motors. We're finding modes of transportation. We're finding feedback loops and error-correcting software. We're finding closed loops. And the reason why we're able to name these things within the cell is because humanity, we are engineers, and we have built systems like what we're finding within the microbe. Ours are clunky. Ours are inarticulate. Ours are just bulky and inefficient in comparison to what we're finding with the elegance and the exquisite design within the cellular matrix. So these are some of the problems that we have to surmount with the perspective of 21st century understanding. So let's just presume for a minute that there is no creator, that there is no God. Let's just go there, okay? And we have to get from randomness and nothingness up to the level of the microbe with only what the universe gives us. Now, the universe gives us a handful of tools and a bunch of building blocks. And now, like for instance, the tools are the four fundamental forces that we have discerned and figured out about the universe. We've got the strong nuclear force, which has to do with the nucleus of the atom, which binds those, those protons and those neutrons together in this tight ball, almost unbreakable. But we did finally split the atom. That's the strong nuclear force. Then we've got the weak nuclear force, which has to do with how atoms will combine with themselves. They'll either form compounds or elements based on attraction, repulsion, or neutrality. That's the realm of the weak nuclear force. And you've got the electromagnetic bandwidth, which stretches from the radio wave frequency to gamma. There's my hands right there. To the gamma wave, or which is very tight, highly energetic. And let me see what else. We got gravity. Okay, so these are the four fundamental forces that act upon the building blocks, which are the periodic table of elements. And we have a very sophisticated understanding of what the universe is made up of. From hydrogen and helium on the light end up to these big, huge radioactive elements on the heavy end, and even exotic, fleeting isotopes and so forth. So we've got a very sophisticated understanding of the building blocks of the universe. Now, the universe also gives us time, which, according to our present understanding, or cosmological model, is approximately 13 to 14 billion years. So, given that starting point, well, also we have to understand too that the universe, when left to itself, without the influence of intelligence or will, the universe is heading towards entropic death. We know that at some point the entire universe is going to be void of energy to do any kind of work. The universe is winding down and stretching out. At some point, every last star is going to extinguish, grow cold, and die. So the universe left to itself is going towards increasing entropy, increasing disorder. It's going from order to disorder. And that's what the universe does when left to itself. Now, for me, the second law of thermodynamics, or the law of entropy, it ends the discussion over whether evolution could possibly have happened. Because one of Darwin's predictions is that the universe needs to act in the exact opposite way. It needs to go from disorder to order. We need to go from nothing to that first exquisite cell, and then we need to go from the cell to you and me. The exact opposite direction that the universe tends, well, not tends, but the universe inextricably goes. I mean, it never goes any other direction but towards entropy. So, if you want to throw that into the lineup, I call that strike 4. But, relax. I'm not going to debate you. And I know that the present-day Darwinist says that since the Earth is a closed system that's constantly being bombarded by the energy of the sun, that radiation from the sun counteracts the second law. That because we're constantly being fed energy from the sun, that this will somehow counteract the universe's tendency towards entropy. Well, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm getting plenty of sun, and everywhere I look, I'm seeing the second law in place. I see it in my knees, I see it in my back, I see it in my eyes, my skin. I'm falling apart. My shoes are falling apart. My clothes are falling apart. My car is falling apart. Everywhere I look, I see the second law of thermodynamics at work. But I'll give you the second law, okay? Relax. even though for me that's the end of the discussion is right there. We don't have to go any further. I see a sheer cliff face, you know, made of pure glass, perfectly smooth. You can't climb this thing, and you're not a gecko. You cannot climb the second law of thermodynamics and get to life. But, you know, I'll give you, like I said, I'll give you the second law, but you have to give me this. It's not helping you. The second law of thermodynamics is not helping your case at all. It's a steep uphill climb for you. So, what do we have to do? What do we know from the perspective of 21st century understanding? We have to get from nothing to that first microbe using only what the universe gives us, with no superintelligence, no will, no power, from a spiritual dimension. All right, let's break that down. Let's take a look at it. Well, one of the differences that I see between Darwin and today's Darwinists is that where Darwin gave almost infinite capacity to natural selection to shape an organism, today's modern Darwinists have to give infinite and godlike powers to natural selection to get from nothing to that microbe. You see, you have to endow natural selection with this ability to bestow, convey whatever preference to one random arrangement of molecules over any other random arrangement of molecules before life exists, before there's advantage. You have to get the universe to sustain these arrangements, these random arrangements of molecules, long before life has even begun. Because you can't have a microbe just suddenly showing up. You can't just boom have a microbe showing up from nothing, because that's a miracle. That's a supernatural act of a creator to get the microbe, just the microbe, to begin. You have to have a creator, because you can't have it showing up instantly. You have to get from nothing up to the microbe over these long, slow, gradual processes over billions of years. You've got to get this blind universe to somehow sustain a preference for one arrangement of molecules over another arrangement of molecules before there's a reason, before there's advantage. So let's just begin with the quote-unquote simple protein, because that's the simplest thing within the cellular matrix is these nanomachines, these nanotechnology machines called protein molecules. So let's break that down for a bit. The protein molecule, these nanotechnology machines are made up of building blocks called amino acids, and there's 22 of them. And if you want to use the analogy of an alphabet, the amino acid alphabet, these protein machines, the spellings, if you want to use the alphabet analogy, the spellings of these protein machines are on the short end, around 90 to 100 amino acids long. That means these words, if you want to use that, are longer than any word I've ever. I mean, even the German language, isn't this bulky. But you've got to get the universe to build these nanotechnology machines, and these things can have no misspellings. They cannot have any errors, because the amino acid alphabet is not just along two axes, the X and the Y axis, like our human languages are. No, this amino acid alphabet is also spelled, the words that they combine to form are along the Z axis as well. So you've got length and width, height and depth. You've got a third dimension involved in this alphabet. And when these amino acid chains linked to one another. There can be no misspellings because what's going to happen is that these protein machines are going to fold up. These amino acids are going to attract and repel based on the weak nuclear forces, and they're going to bunch up and they're going to form these working machines with mechanical energy and swinging arms and opening and closing gates and little legs that move and all this amazing stuff. So you can't have any misspellings. And on the simple end, these protein machines are like 90 to 100 amino acids long. And on the long end, these things can be 1,500 letters long. A chain of 1,500 links, amino acids with perfect spelling. Because if you throw the wrong molecule in there, the wrong amino acid, it shuts it down. So I've tried to think of a picture that would convey randomness. And for me, I think of, the analogy to letters. So let's consider a huge stadium-sized bag of Scrabble tiles. And instead of letters, you've got amino acids. And let's put this huge bag, this stadium-sized bag, on top of a giant paint mixer that is like a never-ending earthquake. So for me, this creates a picture of randomness. And what's happening is these amino acids are jumping out of the bag at various points. And somehow you're going to tell me that through randomness, the amino acids are going to bond to one another to form functioning protein machines in the absence of purpose, long before life has begun. Really? Okay. Okay, good. Okay. Well, it gets worse. Turns out that the universe, with no will, with no intelligence at all, turns out the universe only grabbed left-handed amino acids to form these machines. Because there's right-handed amino acids, and these things are devastating to life. These things are like, arsenic and strychnine, and what happens, what makes these right-handed amino acids so devastating is because they fit perfectly into the receptor sites within the amino chain, but their z-axis appendage is a mirror image of what it should be. So what happens is, instead of having a lock and key relationship or a hand and glove relationship, you've got something skewed that prevents the molecule from folding into its proper shape. The protein machine can't fold now the way it should. It's misshapen, it's denatured. And so these right-handed amino acids, if they randomly go into the sequence, they shut it down. So you've got to introduce to this gigantic quaking bag of Scrabble tiles, you've got to throw in these right-handed amino acids because they're there too. And they're hand grenades. If they go into the sequence, they just blow up the machine. They just, boom, it's done, it's over. And I don't know how many right-handed machines there are, right-handed amino acids there are, but there's a lot of them. But let's just say there's just two. Let's just call them arsenic and strychnine. Let's just throw two into this giant Scrabble bag, which means you've got a 1 in 11 chance. Every 11th molecule that pops randomly out of this giant Scrabble bag is probabilistically going to be a right-handed amino acid. It's going to be a hand grenade. Now you might get a sequence of amino acids that maybe miraculously might be the beginning of a correct spelling for a nanotechnology machine. But you're going to tell me that you're going to get to 90 letters long miraculously, this thing's not misspelled, and miraculously not one right-handed amino acid fell into that sequence? Okay. Starting to feel that noose tighten up a little bit around your neck, starting to feel the airways restricted a little bit, your toes coming up off the ground. That's just a short protein machine. You gotta get those same equations in place for the long ones too. 1,500 letters long. No misspellings, no right-handed amino acids. And these machines got to be formed before life. And somehow you've got to get the universe to sustain these machines for billions of years, because you can't have these things coming together, boom, suddenly sequenced with the microbe, boom, showing up without it being a miracle. It is a miracle. For that to happen, that would be a miracle. So you're gonna go with randomness. The door number one is your preference. All right. Well, good luck with that. But relax. I'll give you protein machines. I'll even give you protein machines. All right. Because protein machines are child's play in comparison to the Sistine Chapel of molecules. The protein machine is like the finger painting that your 4-year-old kid brings home from preschool that you slap up to the refrigerator door with a magnet. You keep it around for a week, then you throw it away. The protein machine is finger painting of a 4-year-old in comparison to the Sistine Chapel of molecules. The DNA molecule, okay? That's why I'm willing to give you the protein machine, because you're not even close to life yet. You're just dealing with the little janitors and the little transport vehicles, all the systems, the subsystems that are needed in the cellular matrix to sustain the DNA molecule. Because the DNA molecule is that's what it's all about. That's where the code of life. And let's just begin there with the word code. Okay, you've got to get from a nothing random universe up to information, but not only information that's out in the open, it's encoded information. That's like information on steroids. I mean, remember World War II, and I mean, we don't have to go back to World War II, but I just remember the whole story of the German Enigma machine. They had to send secrets to one another, and they had to encode the secrets so that they could get their information to another general or somebody out in the field without us deciphering what it was they were saying. So we had the encoding and the code breakers. We had the Enigma machine, the German Enigma machine, and we had the English, the Bletchley Park. Fascinating story about World War II. But that's nothing in comparison to the DNA molecule. The German Enigma machine is a clunky, inefficient device compared to the encoded information within this molecule. And this molecule, I mean, just take a time out, and if you haven't seen Drew Barry's video yet, take a pause, take a break. Aren't you tired of listening to me yet? Take a break and go check out Drew Barry's Astonishing Molecular Machines, because he mentioned something in there that I kind of knew about, but I mean, it just floored me when I heard it again. It talks about the DNA molecule. This molecule is so skinny that it is permanently invisible to us in the visible spectrum of light. It's 2 nanometers in width, which means it's so skinny we can't even bounce light off of it. So the only way we can see that is we have to go to higher levels of the electromagnetic bandwidth to bounce stuff off the DNA molecule. So this thing is 2 nanometers in width and 3 to 4 million nanometers in length. Now get your head around that. 3 to 4 million nanometers. Now a nanometer is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. So 3 to 4 million nanometers is like 3 to 4 meters. And in English, I mean, in American English, that's like 16 to 17 feet long. I mean, I'm looking at the room that I'm sitting in. That's longer than the room I'm sitting in. 2 nanometers in width, 16 to 17 feet long. And it boggles my mind to think that these DNA strands can get packed up inside of a nucleus of a cell. And that cell, I mean, the bigger structure is invisible to the naked eye, let alone the nucleus. You've got this strand of information stretching out the length of the room, packed up so tightly that it fits inside a nucleus that is invisible, inside of a cell that's invisible. It's so small. And I guess a word picture that helps me understand how this could take place. You know, when I was a kid, you know, me and my buddies would go to the lake or the pool, somebody's pool in the backyard, and, you know, inevitably somebody's beach towel falls into the pool, or we throw it in there or whatever. And so it's completely drenched. And what ends up happening is we start wringing this thing out. And so I would grab one end and my buddy would grab another end, and we'd begin twisting and twisting and twisting. And as we're twisting, this towel is getting shorter and it's pulling us together. So a tug-of-war ensues. And as we keep twisting and twisting, what happens is this towel forms a loop right in the middle. And I see that happening to the DNA molecule. I see that same twisting and twisting and twisting to the point where this molecule is getting so tight that these loops are forming. And as this loop forms, it begins this telephone cord spiral. And as that gets tighter and tighter and tighter, another loop will form. And that forms a thicker telephone cord spiral. And again and again and again, until eventually what we can see under a visible spectrum microscope is that the DNA molecule looks like an X. It's the X chromosome. And so for me, that helps me understand or visualize the complexity of what's going on there. And these DNA molecules, this isn't just like finding a book on the beach. This is like finding a library on the beach, because the DNA molecule is the encoded schematics for every single one of the machines needed in the cellular matrix to support the function of life. And what you're going to tell me? You're going to tell me that's a result of randomness and chaos. That'd be like finding, you know, a library on the beach and saying, oh, this is the result of wind and waves and sand and erosion. Just random events just coming together, and boom, a library forms on the beach. I can't get there. You know, so it's just getting worse and worse for the Darwinist. You know, so you starting to feel that noose tighten up a little bit more, starting to eyes bugging out of your head, your tongue's turning purple. Well, relax. I'll even give you the DNA molecule. But this next step, this is it. No more Mr. Nice Guy. Because this is what you have to understand. This is where we encounter the closed loop. So what you have to understand is that somewhere, bound up along this chain of information, are the schematics for the protein machine that's needed to begin the process of unzipping this molecule to extract the information. You feeling that? And not only, you need the information on the DNA molecule to build the protein machine that's necessary to unzip the DNA molecule. That's called a closed loop. You want another word picture? This is how I see it. Imagine the most impregnable safe ever devised in not only human history but universal. Just imagine this safe is made of material so hard that every drill bit just burns up, doesn't even leave a scratch. You can't burn through this with a torch. You can't blow it up with dynamite. This thing is the most impregnable safe ever made. And it's got only one key that will unlock the door. And that key is locked up inside the safe. Okay, you can choke now. That is the DNA molecule. That is what you have to explain through pure, random, mechanistic, blind chance. A universe devoid of superintelligence. A universe devoid of the spiritual realm. A universe devoid of a creator and a God. You've got to get from nothing to the DNA molecule and all the symbiotic relationships involved in sustaining that first microbial life form. Good luck with that.